Well, there is no end to Sri Lanka's economic hardships. With regular power cuts, fuel shortage and widespread agitation, the island nation is living its worst nightmare. Protests demanding the resignation of President Rajapaksa continues in Colombo. Sri Lankan police have scaled deployment after thousands of protesters tried to storm Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa's residence on Monday. The enraged citizens wanted the family out of power, whom they have been blaming for the ongoing crisis. Meanwhile, Sri Lankan opposition parties have rejected President Gotabaya's invitation to join the proposed unity government, calling it a sham.
Where does this hospitality industry stand at the moment in Sri Lanka?
Actually, there's no problem in the hospital industry. There's only the problem we have, the fuel problem, and the government have less dollar. That is why all the crises are started. Actually, now is electricity was not there in 24 hours. We have power cuts, and we are running to the generator, all the operations.
And how are you getting the fuel for your generators?
That's a diesel. We have to also wait in the queue because there is no any proper plan to give the fuel for hospital industry. And somehow we had our stock for the 3-4 days, but after that we are having the problem because no guests want to stay in the non-AC room because
It's very hot.
Yeah, there's a problem in the main city like this. Resort, there is no problem. Resort is still running fine. But city hotel, we are suffering because of that problem, and we are receiving so many cancellations these days.
In this beautiful island country, tourism contributes in the major economy. Now, what happened after the economic crisis that led to the uncertainty? There have been curfew, the emergency, the social media blockade, the protest all over, and moreover the crisis of essentials including the food items, the fuels, has now forced the tourists to leave Sri Lanka and they're going back to their destination. In one of the premier hotels of the Colombo town in the capital city, there you see totally looks deserted. Barely tourists left in such hotels, the luxurious hotels, be the 4-star hotel, the 5-star hotels, or even the smaller hotels, because largely you see the tourists not only from the Asia but also from the Europe, from the West, from all over the globe. But now amidst of the uncertainty, almost the tourists are leaving this country, going back to their destination. They are apprehensive about the security, they are apprehensive about the situation in Colombo.
Sri Lankans are grappling with the worst economic crisis that they've ever faced, but what triggered it and who's to blame? Akshita Nandgopal tells you in our next report what led to this unprecedented situation in the island nation.
Civilians dismantling government property. Plumes of black smoke rising from a vehicle set ablaze. Police in riot gear unleashing hell. Thousands on the streets protesting economic hardships and an economy that's teetering on the brink of collapse. The island nation of Sri Lanka is spiraling into an economic meltdown of epic proportions. An unprecedented economic crisis is unfolding in the island nation of 22 million. The Sri Lanka economy is facing a crisis owing to a serious balance of payments problem. It's exhausted over 70% of its foreign reserves and is also facing a budget shortfall. A weakened currency and unbridled inflation have caused prices of staples to skyrocket. It has a mammoth debt now of $7 billion. Ordinary citizens are having to bear the brunt of this crisis. A kilo of sugar, for example, now costs a whopping 240 rupees. The price of a single egg, that's right, one egg, is pegged at 30 rupees. A kilo pack of milk powder costs a staggering 1,900 rupees. And add to that, debilitating power cuts continue to plague the island nation as the government is essentially unable to pay for fuel imports. Retail inflation in the country had touched 17.5% in February. Food inflation has now soared over 25%, causing this meteoric spike in prices. But this catastrophic economic crisis in Sri Lanka was anything but serendipitous. So how did Sri Lanka really get here? The root of the crisis essentially lies in economic mismanagement of not one government but successive governments. The current crisis was heightened by exorbitant tax cuts given by the Gotabaya Rajapaksa government months after winning the presidential election. This was back in 2019. Value-added tax was cut from 15% right down to 8%. 7 other taxes, and this includes a 2% nation-building tax, all of it abolished. While the 2019 Easter Sunday blasts battered the lucrative tourism industry, the COVID-19 pandemic was the final nail in the coffin for a vibrant vacation trade. And that also wiped out foreign worker remittances. Foreign exchange reserves plummeted by 70% in 2 years. The country's farm sector was also sharply hit by Rajapaksa's decision of banning all chemical fertilizers. This was in 2021, a move that was later rescinded. But what really was the final trigger? It was the petrol price hike caused by the Ukraine-Russia crisis, which exasperated an already dire situation. Now to Sri Lanka's foreign debt. The island nation has a whopping $7 billion debt due in 2022. Its public debt is 110% of its GDP, believe it or not. Sri Lanka owes most of its debts to countries like China, Japan, to us, India, and organizations like the World Bank and Asian Development Bank. It's also borrowed from the international market. While market borrowings make up 47% of the debt, Asian Development Bank is about 13%, Japan and China make up 10% each. So amid this crisis, who's helping Sri Lanka? And I'm sure you're all asking, what's India doing? The Sri Lankan government has approached the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, for help. The Rajapaksa government has also sought help from China as well as us in India. A diesel shipment under a $500 million credit line has been agreed with India. We're also providing a $1 billion credit line for essential imports. China, meanwhile, is considering a request of $2.5 billion from Colombo. It's also gifted 2,000 tons of rice to help address the food crisis. What next for Sri Lanka? Well, debt restructuring and short-term loans from the IMF as well as the World Bank may stabilize the economic and financial situation of the island nation. But growing protests and austerity measures that have been demanded by lenders may further force the government to the brink of collapse. So this is a long-term crisis that the island nation is staring at.